So both the Atlanta Hawks and the Milwaukee Bucks won their Game 7s, with the Hawks beating the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 7 and the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Brooklyn Nets in Game 7. And the crazy thing is that in both of those series, both of those teams were not favored to win, yet they did. But now the Atlanta Hawks and the Bucks are going to meet in the NBA Conference Finals. So in today's video, I'll be predicting who I think will win the series and in how much games. The way it's going to work is I'm going to give some reasons to why the Bucks can win the series and the reasons why the Hawks can win the series. Then at the end of the video, I'm going to come to a conclusion on who I think will win. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. I literally post every single day, so stay tuned. Also, if you could help me reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers, I would really appreciate it. Comment on this video, start a conversation with me because I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. The first reason the Milwaukee Bucks can win this series is the fact that the Bucks are one of the better defensive teams in the NBA, and I feel like their defensive personnel matches very well against the Atlanta Hawks, because during the regular season, Milwaukee was a top 10 defense, and against the Brooklyn Nets, who although they were injured, were still a pretty good offensive team, and the Bucks played some really good defense at times. They weren't perfect, but there were definitely some moments where they were very good, and the Atlanta Hawks are a team that is one of the best offensive teams in the whole NBA. So if the Bucks want to win the series, they're going to have to do well on the defensive side of the ball. And I think they can do this because they have a bunch of defenders. As we know, they have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who won the Defensive Player of the Year last season. And a lot of people criticize him for not guarding Kevin Durant. And in this series, there's not a player of Kevin Durant's level on the opposing team, so he can be a help defender the whole entire time. They also have Jrue Holiday, who's one of the best guard defenders in the league. They also have Chris Middleton, who's a really good defender, especially in the postseason when he tries. Brook Lopez is a really good paint defender, but he can't guard a perimeter to save his life. But when it comes to guarding the paint, he's one of the best in the NBA. PJ Tucker is a fantastic perimeter defender, and guys like Pat Connaughton's a solid one. And when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks, their best player in Trae Young is someone who's going to need to be held in check. And I think Milwaukee is definitely capable of doing that, because I realize that Trae Young isn't a player who can just get locked down or anything close to that. But I do think the Milwaukee Bucks can make him struggle and work hard for his points, because they could put a guy like Jrue Holiday on him, and I think Jrue Holiday could do a solid job on him because Jrue is a very fast and strong defender, and he's just very smart. He knows how to see angles and things like that. I feel like he's not going to allow Trae Young to go off crazily, and I feel like he can stay in front of him better than nearly any other NBA defender in the NBA. And then outside of Trae Young, the Hawks' second best player is probably John Collins. He hasn't been fantastic in the postseason, but he hasn't been horrible. And they could just put Giannis Antetokounmpo on him, and I think he'll obviously do a good job. And when it comes to guys like Kevin Huerter, Gallinari, or Bogdan Bogdanovic, guys like PJ Tucker, Chris Middleton, or Pat Connaughton will all do a solid job on them. I think they can stop them from going crazy. And someone they're gonna have to watch out for is Clint Capella, but I actually think Brook Lopez can do at least a solid job when it comes to defending him and not allowing him to completely control the boards and stop him from getting too much offensive rebounds. I still think there were many instances where Clint Capella gets a lot of lobs and offensive rebounds, because even Joel Embiid couldn't stop him from doing that consistently. I don't think he'll go crazy or anything like that, but so if Milwaukee's going to want to win the series, their defense is going to have to be pretty good so this Hawks offense doesn't get on fire, and I actually think there's a decent chance that it will be. The first reason I believe the Atlanta Hawks can win this series is due to the fact that the Atlanta Hawks, as I said, are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA. Because when you look at this roster, you could just see how much great shooters and great offensive players they have on their team. Because we all know they have Trae Young, who is a guy who creates plays for the whole team. Even if his shot's not falling, he can still get so much open shots for other players on the team, and he's always gets to the rim somehow, no matter who's in front of him. I expect him to have a solid series. I don't think he's going to average 35 points a game or something like that, but I do think he'll have some solid and good games. They have John Collins, who's been decent in the playoffs. He can shoot the ball at a good level and finish at the basket at a good level with his crazy dunks. They also have a guy guy Danilo Gallinari, who has been humongous for them in the playoffs because he's been having some really good games and he always hits timely shots. He's not an easy guy to defend. They also have a guy in Kevin Huerter, who we all saw shine in Game 7, leading the Hawks to the win, and he's not a guy who necessarily goes off for games like that consistently, but he can always give the Hawks a solid 12 to 15 points and hit some three-pointers. They also have Bogdan Bogdanovic, who struggled in that Sixers series, but he's a guy who can get the buckets and hit threes, and he can create plays at a decent level. The Hawks also have Lou Williams coming off the bench, and we all know Lou is a guy who can score the ball at a great level, and he can go off at any time, and he can have some big games for them. And at the center spot, they have Clint Capella, who catches every single alley-oop and gets every single rebound, as he did lead the league in rebounding this year, if you didn't know. And the thing that makes the Hawks so scary is the fact that nearly everyone on their team is an amazing shooter. They don't just have like solid shooters or average shooters. They have some legitimate elite three-point shooters, and they're not just catch and shoot shooters. They're guys who could take it to the rim and finish the ball at the bucket. So this Hawks team is going to be very hard to defend. It doesn't matter how good the Bucks defense is. The Hawks are still probably going to be good on offense. If the Hawks want to win this series, they're going to have to be good on offense and have to get on fire, because I think in a series like this, they're a slightly better offensive team. The second reason I think the Milwaukee Bucks can win this series is the fact that no one on this Atlanta roster can guard the Bucks' best player in Giannis Antetokounmpo at all. Like, when I look at this roster, there's no one who I think could even do a decent job at guarding Giannis. And this is very important since Giannis is literally a top 5 player in the NBA and he's the Bucks' best player. And in this series, he's going to be the best player on the court. And if your team has literally no one who can guard him or even hope to guard him, that's a huge disadvantage. I think the Hawks are probably going to put guys like John Collins or Danilo Gallinari on him, and I'm sorry, those guys are going to get absolutely abused. They probably would have liked to put DeAndre Hunter on him, but he is injured and out for the season, and I think he could have done a better job than anyone on the team, but he definitely wasn't going to lock up Giannis. He's a good defender, but Giannis is just too big and long. There isn't even a defender in the NBA who I think could actually lock up Giannis one-on-one consistently. So it's not really the Hawks' fault, but there are defenders who could do a solid job defending him, and I don't think the Hawks have a single win. And if the best player on the Bucks and Giannis is doing that fantastic, it makes it so hard to beat this team, because when Giannis is attacking the rim and he's doing it easily, you're probably going to want to double team or even triple team him, and that makes some Bucks players wide open for three-pointers, and you might want to just live with the shooters hoping that they miss their shots, which is a scheme that has somewhat worked in the past. But if they're hitting their shots, there's literally nothing you can do. So if the Bucks win this series, best believe it's going to be because Giannis played well and played absolutely dominant. The second reason the Atlanta Hawks can win this series is because of the fact that the Atlanta Hawks definitely have the coaching advantage in this series. Because although Mike Budenholzer is a really good regular season coach, he's far from a great coach in the postseason due to his inability to make adjustments. I feel like the Hawks can take advantage of that, and their coach Nate McMillan is honestly one of the best 6 or 7 coaches in the NBA. So I think if the Hawks are going to win the series, it's going to be because he coached phenomenally, and it's going to be because Mike Budenholzer didn't make no adjustments. Nate McMillan is definitely a player capable of making a great defensive scheme. The Hawks are a great offensive team, so I think he'll get them a bunch of open looks. And as I said, the Hawks aren't necessarily a great defensive team, like with their talent and stuff. They don't really have any elite defenders, but the only reason they've been good ever since getting Nate McMillan is because of Nate McMillan and his defensive scheme, and I think there's a chance he could make a good defensive scheme to defend this Bucks team. I somewhat question whether or not he can make a scheme to guard a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, but it has been done before, and if any coach is going to stand out and have a real imprint on this series, it's definitely going to be the Atlanta Hawks coach and Nate McMillan. And if the Hawks end up winning the series, it's going to be because Nate McMillan outcoached Mike Budenholzer terribly, and I actually think there's a decent chance that could happen. The third reason the Milwaukee Bucks can win a series like this is the fact that it's not really an X and O's type of thing, but when you watch the Milwaukee Bucks, they just look like they're on a mission. Because in the first round of the playoffs, they were versus the Miami Heat, and there were people who thought it would be a really close series, and some people even thought the Miami Heat would beat them for the second year in a row. And after there was one first game and it was really close. The Bucks went on to completely embarrass the Heat the next 3 games in embarrassing fashion, beating them in a 4-game sweep. Then versus the Brooklyn Nets, although the Nets did struggle with injuries, I'm not going to dispute that, and the Bucks probably wouldn't have won the series if the Nets were fully healthy, but nonetheless, Kyrie Irving did play 3 games, and James Harden, although he was still injured, he still had the gravity of a superstar. The Bucks weren't just leaving him open, and Kevin Durant was going absolutely nuts, playing the best basketball I've ever seen him play in his career, and the Bucks still ended up winning that series. I don't care what you say about injuries or anything like that. That was a very impressive win by the Bucks, and the thing people are going to forget is that a lot of people said that even with the injuries, they thought that the Nets would win the series. And I just think after beating a team like the Brooklyn Nets, they're not going to try and lose to a team like the Atlanta Hawks, who are good, but they're simply not the Brooklyn Nets. They're simply not as good as the Nets, and I don't think Giannis is going to let this go by, because I think he's on a mission to win the championship, and this is their best chance to win the championship. And if they don't win it this year, I don't think they ever will win one again. So I think if the Bucks win this series, it's going to be because they were determined throughout the whole series, and that's just the way their season is going to go. The third reason I believe the Atlanta Hawks can win this series is the fact that in the previous 2 rounds, the Hawks were not expected to win. Because in the first round, a lot of people had the Knicks winning, and I was actually a person who thought that the Knicks didn't even stand a chance versus Atlanta because their offense was so terrible. But the Hawks beat them in a gentleman's 5 games. Then in the second round, they were definitely not expected to win versus the Philadelphia 76ers. I had the 76ers winning in 6 or 7 games, so obviously I was wrong. And now they're going to face the Bucks, who is going to be the best team that they have ever faced so far in the postseason. But after being doubted so much and in all of their series, it's not impossible to think that they could beat the Bucks, because they just beat a fully healthy Philadelphia 76ers team. Sure, Danny Green would have helped, but I don't think he would have been game-changing, especially since they got absolutely excellent output out of Seth Curry. And the 76ers were a team that most people thought could at least compete with the Milwaukee Bucks and potentially even beat them, and the Hawks just beat them while the Hawks were missing their 3rd best player in DeAndre Hunter. So it just shows me that the Hawks are a serious team, and they could definitely beat the Milwaukee Bucks. To conclude the video, I think the Milwaukee Bucks will win this series in 6 games due to the fact that I just can't see Milwaukee beating a team like the Brooklyn Nets, and Giannis being on an absolute mission and not allowing his team to lose just to lose to the Atlanta Hawks. I feel like this is where the Hawks season ends. It was truly fantastic and an amazing run, and it just shows me that this Hawks team, maybe even by next year, could be legitimate NBA title contenders. Maybe if they could just get fully healthy, and if they could get a second legitimate star besides Trae Young. I think this series will have some entertaining games, but ultimately, I think the Bucks will win in 6 games. I only give the Hawks 2 games out of the series because of how amazing they've been playing this postseason, how great their offense is. I think they can get on fire for at least 2 games in the series. I was going to say 5 games, but I don't think that will happen. I'm truly confident in the Bucks to win the series, but honestly, I would rather see the Bucks win in my opinion, just because I feel like I would like to see Giannis get a ring. But if the Hawks were to win, I honestly wouldn't be sad or anything like that. I like Trae Young, as long as it's not the Brooklyn Nets. Anyways guys, that's it for the video. Let me know who you think is going to win the series. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and touch my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video, start a conversation with me, as I do respond to every single one of my comments, and play that intro.